Yo people, welcome back to the YouTube channel. You already know what time it is. It's time for another video. Big up your damn selves. Make sure you smash the likes and subscribe. We are going with my final Premier League predictions. That's it. This is where I'm locking in now. Transfer window's closed. This is what I want to be judged upon at the end of the season. You may have heard some trailers. You may have heard some whispers, some rumblings of what I've said somewhere on the web. No, this is my final prediction. This is it now. Window's closed. We've had a couple of games to get our heads together and actually really see these teams for what they are. This is what I want to lock in and submit to the people. So let's get down to business. Manchester City in first. Let's not be foolish. Let's not be deluded. It's Pep Guardiola. Seek, search, and destroy. That's what he does when he steps into any league. When he saturates himself into any league, he plants those seeds. Those roots develop. There's Arteta's popping out here. There's companies popping out there. But the end goal is Manchester City or Pep Guardiola dominance. And this will be a record-breaking fourth title. Not only just because they have replaced and replenished what they've lost, which is substantial. They lost Mahr'S, Gundogan. These are massive players in what was a very dominant team and continues to be. But they've replaced those players. They haven't lost in terms of numbers. You know, Matisse Nunes comes in, Cover comes in, Vardy comes in, Doku. And then on top of that, I feel like they're building the team around Foden now. Kevin De Bruyne's injury, I was always asking, is Foden going to get that game time centrally? And the signing of Matisse Nunes, that profile of player, feels like another extension of the foundation of a Cover, of a Rodri, to kind of build this kind of fulcrum around Foden. And then he is the guy in the middle that is special. He's the one that in those games where, you know what, it wasn't always brilliant watch. It wasn't always flawless Man City, but he was the special individual that was creating, that was controlling, that was doing something out of the ordinary. And it's a physical team. You know, Vardy now, Doku, Matisse Nunes, it is becoming a more physical team, but they're always going to play football. So if they're dominating you from a footballing standpoint and from a physical standpoint, what do you do? We move. That's what we do. We move. So in second, I have Arsenal. I'm going to do all the Champions League places first. Second, I have Arsenal, currently 10 points from 12. The only team they dropped points to was Fulham at home on that 10 men. Paulinho from a corner. Arsenal, they have not done enough to close the gap for me. Havertz coming in is a complicated move. It's a move that, for me, changes the dynamic of the midfield, and not in a good way. I don't think he's as good defensively as Xhaka was, and I don't think going forward he has any outstanding attribute that is going to lift this team to another level. And that's what you do when you pay 65 million for someone to come in. He's got the versatility to go and play up front if you're playing away from home against a top team, cool. But it's not enough to bridge the gap. You know, in that game against Manchester United, he was the one that looked like a lost puppy. He's the one that was kind of in la la land. Everybody else was singing from the same song sheet. I'm not saying that Arsenal played brilliantly in terms of any individual extravagant performance, but everybody was pulling in the same direction with the same kind of game plan and idea. He is new to the team. He is coming into a system that is already tailor-made for the players within it, and he's the sore thumb. What I feel like they need to do is take him out, integrate him slowly, drip feed him if he actually deserves to come back in, because Vieira could actually have a strong second season. You never know. Smith Rowe, I've been saying that left half space is tailor-made for you. You've been at Arsenal for years. You know, you've come through the academy. You know the system. Where are you? That slot is very much there for you to take if you're actually back to the level before injury. Havertz needs to be slowly integrated, regardless of price tag, regardless of wage, regardless of ego, regardless of anything. I'm talking about more ego from Arteta wanting to prove and showcase that his money was well spent. He's not ready for that team right now. Timber, massive loss. Rice upgrading that team, but Timber, massive loss. Lost Tierney as well. If they were to have a couple of injuries in defence, it could get sticky. But the foundation of that team for me is still settled enough to say that I'm going to put them in this position. But it could be very close. It will be very close, I think, between them. And then I have Liverpool in third, also 10 points from 12. The one draw coming against Chelsea away from home. Newcastle they beat, Villa they beat. 10 men against Bournemouth and Newcastle. Very tough start to the season in terms of those first four fixtures. And to come away with 10 points is very impressive, especially with an imbalanced midfield and a injury-stricken, suspended defence. And that's the weak point of the team, is the defence, because I do think there's a lack of availability in that defence. They needed to bring in another player, even two, and sell one of the injury-prone defenders, a Gomez or a Matip, maybe a Matip because he's older. Bring in a left-footed centre-back, and I think, and balance that midfield, and it would have been job done. They didn't get a Paulinho, they didn't get a, they didn't get a DM. They went more in the Gravenberch mould. Will he be moulded into a 6? We shall see. But in the time it takes for them to do that, if it does even take half a season, some points may be dropped and will be dropped, in my opinion, due to imbalance. But they didn't have that problem against Villa. They are dying and breathing for Klopp. And the goals in this team is ridiculous. The depth up front, Nunes, Jota, Diaz, Gakpo, Salah, Szoboszlai will score from midfield. Too many goals in this team to not win most games. So I've got them in that position for that. And the easy Europa League group, they will not struggle to pick up points, even with a rested team. When the Elliots come in, the Joneses come in, or whoever, they should be able to navigate that group and the first half of the season European campaign without any troubles. Shouldn't impact the league too much. In fourth, I've got Chelsea. Now, you may laugh. You probably are laughing if you're a rival. But that's what I'm going with, purely because I do believe that my team has a lot more quality than people think. I do think we've got a lot of injury issues, and I do think that will be our kryptonite potentially if we do keep picking up these injuries. Lavia's got another injury today. If we just keep picking up injuries constantly, we're never going to have any continuity, any consistency, any chemistries. We're just going to be flipping, dicing, we're just going to be changing up the 11 every single game, and it's never going to work. So we do need to get a hold on that. And I was saying it before, Liverpool and Chelsea probably got some of the worst injury records in the league in terms of players missing all the time, in terms of how many games players miss. Chelsea needs to get a hold of that. If Chelsea can put their team back together and play people in their strongest position and just go back to doing the basics, play wingers at wing, play fullbacks at fullback, play centre-backs at centre-back, ask them to do things they know how to do, and slowly build your system up from there and keep the majority of that team fit. With Nkunku when he comes back, Palmer, good player, James, we'll struggle to get a lot of goals at home, low blocks. That's something they're going to have to figure out along the way. But I still believe with no Europe, that team should be in Champions League. And that's how I see it. You got no Europe, you got one game a week. Brighton in the cup, we'll see how that goes. You got to be picking up Champions League places. I'm not really trying to see any less with the quality that's on show with Enzo, with Caicedo. So for me, that's where I've got them placed. Just behind that, I have Tottenham in fifth. Again, no European football. But let me actually preface on Chelsea quickly before we move on. They have a very interesting run of games between late October after the international break and early December. Arsenal, Brentford, Spurs, City, Newcastle, Brighton, Man United. That's all in a row for Chelsea. If they have not picked up significant points before that run-in, then maybe I'll be having to push them a couple places down. So, yeah. But Tottenham in fifth. I have Tottenham in fifth. Tottenham, for me, have put together their team well in this window. They've clearly got a system. They're playing very good football. Pains me to say it, but they are. And Ange has already implemented quite clearly something already. But the second team was shown against Fulham. There's no depth. And this is the difference between, for me, them and everybody above them. They don't have any depth. Couple of injuries to Tottenham, and you're bringing in some severely weakened options off the bench to replace. The Lo Celsos, the Skips, the Højbjergs, the Dyers. All of these guys coming in to the centre-back midfield, attacking midfield positions. Even in attack, Brennan Johnson, let's see how he does. Richarlison, does he step up? Kulusevski, does he get back to the form he showed when he first joined? There's a lot of question marks still in that Tottenham team. They've put together a foundation. There is a system. There is a way of playing. There is a Son, a Maddison, a Basuma, a Sarr, a Romero, a Van de Ven. There is the inklings of a spine. Early days, but there is an inkling of a spine. But what's around that spine is still very weak. Destiny started brilliantly as well, but there's still problems in terms of depth. And luckily for them, though, they are already out the Carabao Cup thanks to that second team. So maybe they should be able to get through the season without loads of injuries. If they keep that team together, that's kind of why they have them fifth. If they were to pick up 3-4 injuries, they might drop a lot of points. So now we move over to the Europa League qualifiers. Man United, I have them. This is probably the biggest mover out of everyone from where I thought people would finish before the transfer window closed, and then when the transfer window closed and the season started. Man United in sixth. Now, 2 wins against Forest and Wolves at home, 2 losses against Arsenal and Spurs away. Their away record is horrendous. Their home record is very good. So everything checks out, right? No. Man United have this main character syndrome going on right now, along with Chelsea, but Man United too. There just seems to be issues all the time. Now it's Sancho beefing Ten Hag. So that idea that I had with Sancho from pre-season in the false 9, in the 10, looking like he's getting back to it, scored against Arsenal, thinking that he could contribute this season, even if it's with 10 GA. That's out the window. Sancho's not involved. Clearly, him and Ten Hag are not seeing eye to eye. He won't be playing much this season. So rip that up. Anthony situation. Bang. He won't probably be involved now. Let's see. So now I'm restructuring my vision of what even Man United were trying to build. Not even that it was looking like it was looking good, right? At the start of the season, what they're building, they're lucky to maybe even have the points that they have with the performance against Wolves at home. And obviously shipping 2 goals at home to Nottingham Forest in 6 minutes. They're probably quite fortuitous to have the 6 points that they have. But whatever they were building now is already breaking apart, and we haven't even got anywhere yet. The Champions League against Bayern Munich, Galatasaray, that's not even started. So I think a diamond formation may be on the cards. I don't think he's going to do it, but I've seen Ancelotti do it at Chelsea. I'm seeing him do it at Real Madrid. That just takes away the burden of not having any wingers. Now, who's going to bomb forward on the left flank? Sure. Not really that type of fullback. Dalot on the right, yes, could give you width. Maybe Shaw tucks in as a left-sided centre-back. Dalot pops off forward, and I don't know who goes to the wide position on the left. Maybe a Mount or a Rashford. It's not easy to do this, but it does get rid of the winger issue that they have. There's no Diallo, he's injured. There's no, at the moment, Anthony is having a situation that we don't know how that's going to materialise. We also have Sancho out. They don't have many wingers. Palestri's one of the few left, Garnacho, right? And he's not great from the start. It allows you to put Højlund and Rashford together in the front too. Go with your 10 and Bruno. Mount maybe peels off to the left. Amrabat maybe peels off to the right. He might be injured as well in this diamond. And, you know, you go from there. But as I explain it, it's still not fully fleshed out. I don't know what they're going to do. But yeah, Man United in 6th. They got a Champions League group that they should navigate through. Galatasaray is not an easy one away from home, but Bayern Munich I expect to top that group. After the Champions League group games, these are their fixtures. Burnley away, Brentford as well at home, City at home, Luton at home, Newcastle away, and Liverpool away. The Newcastle and Liverpool aways are after ties against Galatasaray away and PSG at home. So not fun little few days there. The City and Luton ones are after Copenhagen games, so shouldn't be too much disruption. But again, I'm kind of factoring in that Champions League midweek back and forth. And again, Manchester United's depth. If we're speaking about Tottenham's depth, Man United's depth is not great either. Some of the options that they've got coming off the bench is not great. It's not fun. Martial's looking like an old man against Arsenal. So yeah, Man United's depth, sticky icky. Then the other European teams, you've got Aston Villa. I've got them next up. In 7th, I've got Brighton. In 8th, I've got Newcastle in 9th. And I've got West Ham in 10th. These 4 teams, you could make an argument to interchange them any way, which way you want. And you could even make an argument to put them higher in the table and take out maybe a Chelsea or a Man United or Tottenham. But I've got them down here for 2 reasons. A lot of them, it's the first time they're in Europe and dealing with that schedule. Newcastle in particular have got one hell of a group in the Champions League. I've got Aston Villa to finish the highest of this group because they have a Conference League group that's incredibly weak. They should get through that. And Emery has European experience from managing Villarreal and Sevilla. He should know the dynamic of Europe to league and juggling the two. Aston Villa were one of the most informed teams when Emery arrived last season as well, in terms of just the way they finished the season. They were very much just one of the strongest. And of course, they've added a lot of players. There's a lot of depth. I know they've started the season a bit wobbly, 6 points so far. 2 wins against Burnley and Everton, 2 defeats against Newcastle and Liverpool. Again, not like those 2 defeats weren't expected. I think Newcastle was the one where maybe you feel like they could have got something out of that. It's, again, 2 teams that are quite close together in the table, potentially. But it's not an alarming thing that they've lost against Newcastle. I think Liverpool's pretty disappointed that they were just kind of just annihilated, it felt like. But it can happen. They've got a lot of injuries right now. That's the thing with Aston Villa. They've got a lot of injuries. Jacob Ramsey's to come back into this team. Buendia's to come back into this team. Leon Bailey didn't start against Liverpool. He's another option. As long as Emery doesn't get too cautious and does use these attacking talents, which I think he will, They got a lot of strength in depth, and they're very quick to replace any problems. Mings goes out for a season. They bring in Lenlet for, you know, depth in the centre-back position. Loads of midfielders, Tielemans, Douglas Luiz, you know, so many options, Kamara, McGinn. So for me, there's a lot of depth in that team to handle Conference League and Premier League. And of course, there's also experience with the coach. So I've got them in that position. Brighton I have next because I think their system and the way they play is just so set in stone that they are one of those teams that I think will take points off the bottom half and do it well. Now, when they come up against the top teams, it can be anybody's game, right? Anybody's pick and mix. But against the bottom half, they just play such a level of football that the Lutons and the Wolves and the Sheffield, they will just not be able to comprehend what's going on. They won't be able to compete. And I think they'll just take those points and it will all add up into them being in a strong position again. And they can mix it with the big teams. We've already seen that. But I think the bottom half, just the standard of football that they play, even if you put up... Now, if you put up a low block, we saw against West Ham, there maybe could be a little jeopardy there. West Ham put up a low block. They had to kind of try and navigate through that. They couldn't. West Ham hit them on the break. Antonio, Bowen, Benrahma, Kudus has to come into that team. Paqueta. It was a struggle and they got slapped. But they also then slapped up Newcastle as well. And like I said, they've beaten the Lutons, the Wolves. I think Brighton will finish in that position. I think they've got strength and depth. They've got João Pedro. They've got Welbeck. Enciso's injured, but they have Matoma. They got options. That's the point. They've got options. Ferguson, hat-trick. They got options. There's enough rotation there. Newcastle I have next. The reason why I've got Newcastle this low is not a disrespect. Newcastle got a very good team. No disrespect to any of these top 10 teams, right? West Ham I'll go to next. No disrespect. I can't. You beat us. No disrespect. But I think Newcastle, they've had a slow start with 3 points from 12. But then on top of that, now, let me be honest. The start is difficult. They beat Villa. They lost to City, Liverpool and Brighton, right? So that's a very, very difficult first 4 games. The games get easier. And I think Newcastle will pick up their points. The problem for Newcastle is their Champions League group is so difficult. They have Milan, AC Milan. They have PSG. They have Dortmund. I think they might be fighting with Dortmund for third in that group, right? I think AC Milan and PSG will qualify. But the point is, those 6 games, so difficult. Just ridiculously difficult. More than you can believe. Newcastle are about to step into the unknown, into a place that they've never been. Eddie Howe is about to step into a place he's never been. You have to put together your strongest possible 11 and fight for your lives in those games. And you may pull off some Champions League shocks. I'm looking forward to this group. I think Newcastle at St. James's with that crowd could do a madness. But PSG will be coming. Mbappe, Dembele, Asensio, you know, Mouani, Ramos. This is not no joke. AC Milan, basically Chelsea B on steroids. Pulisic, Loftus-Cheek, Leao, you know, Giroud, Theo Hernandez. It's gonna be mad. And Newcastle will navigate that group, playing their strongest team, all 6 games, and really fighting and dying by the sword, and then return to the Premier League on the weekends. And that's where I feel like Newcastle, even though their fixtures get easier, those easier fixtures could still see them drop points because of that very tumultuous Champions League group. They got Sheffield away, West Ham away, Wolves away, Bournemouth away, Man United at home, and Fulham at home after Champions League group games in this 2023 year. So let's see how they do. A lot of those games you'd say they should win. United and West Ham are the toughest ones. The other ones you'd say they should win. But because of that group and that travel and that back and forth and that inexperience maybe dealing with that situation for some of those players, let's see. But I've got them 9th because of it. West Ham in 10th, it's hard on West Ham. They got 10 points. They've started so strong. They've added to their squad. They've spent the Rice money very well. Ward-Prowse and Alvarez. You've got Kudus and Paqueta. You've got Bowen. You've got Benrahma. You've got Cornet, who we never really see, but we saw ability at Burnley. We've got Antonio. The only problem with this is Antonio up front. There's no competition. Now, some West Ham fans have been telling me that maybe Bowen goes up front and then you move Kudus, and then, you know, you can kind of optimize the team to kind of handle an Antonio absence. But what Antonio does is so specific and so necessary to this West Ham team, and he gets them up the pitch. He holds up the ball. He does things that I don't think any of their other players can really do. And it's something that Moyes heavily relies upon tactically. And it's something that if he doesn't have, I think his team struggle and they kind of fall and they capitulate a little bit because it's the outlet's gone. He's not going to coach a possession base, even with the talent he has. We saw it last season. Skamaka, very good player on the ball, receiving with his back to play, linking up. It just didn't work for Moyes because that's just not what he wants. So even though he has some possession-based players that should be able to play really good football, he wants to play his way, and that way has worked. They have won. They are 10 points. I saw them against Luton. It wasn't pretty. They got the result. I saw them against Brighton. They actually had great XG and they deserved to win on chances, but again, they didn't have majority of the ball. It was a lot of counter. Against Chelsea, again, you know, it was hitting us in transition, pinning Antonio against centre-backs and building from there. That's the way they play and that's the way they get results, and that's great. But if Antonio goes down injured, or if he needs a rest, or he drops off because he's been absolutely squeezed like a sponge, then I want to know how he adapts to that. And that's the question mark. With European football and Europa League as well, which they have to navigate, it's a lot. But they have a lot of quality. So that prediction there with those guys, like I said, they could easily prove me wrong. I would not be shocked. I would be more shocked if I got all of those right, because there's just such small margins between the teams. Top 10 is ridiculously competitive right now. So going into the bottom half, we have Forest, who brought in 14 new players. Origi backing up Awani. You've got Alanga, you've got Sanaga, you've got Hudson-Odoi, Sanage, you've got all these guys, and Santos on loan and etc. Omobamidele, who's that from Norwich, right? Omobamidele, I hope I've pronounced that right. A good ball playing young centre back, I've heard. Point being, it's going to take a long time to integrate all these players. So a lot of players, very similar to last season. Brought in a lot of players over the summer. Kind of like Diet Chelsea, you could say. Brought in a lot of players over the summer. Took time to integrate. Once they integrated, started to get more results, started to see more consistency. That probably will happen again because there's just too many players to get into a flow from the get-go. But that's a lot of good talent they've got there. And once it does click, then, like I said, I've got them top, best of the rest, because there is a lot of quality in that team. Andre Santos, I've seen at Chelsea. I know him well from the pre-season. Sanage, I'm interested to see how he does from PSV. There's been a lot of hype around him. Hudson-Odoi, very familiar with. Alanga scored against us. Origi couldn't get a better super sub. And Awani's scoring goals. It's a very good team. It's a very good team. It's a team that is pushing to try and get into that top 10. I think they'll just miss out. Now, I've got a batch of London clubs from 12th to 14th. I've got Brentford, then I've got Palace, and then I've got Fulham. You could probably interchange these any which way you want. I think Fulham might struggle for goals with Mitrovic gone. Divock Origi is the only striker to score so far in the opening 4 games. Willian is 35, and Wilson has a free kick in him and a shot in him or cutting in, but he's not exactly prolific. I think Fulham will struggle to score goals. Jimenez coming into this team as a new signing is not exactly a needle mover. It's a massive drop-off from Mitrovic. He hasn't looked the same since his head injury. And they've signed Iwobi and Bassi and Adama Traore, again, no end product. It's sideways steps, some drop-offs as well, like I said, with the striker. So it's just kind of like a settling season for Fulham. I don't think they're in a relegation battle, but I don't think they're pulling up any trees. I've got Palace and Brentford ahead of them. Brentford, I think with Wissa and Mbeumo, they got goals. These guys have been scoring goals early part of the season. They're banging them in. Tony, when he comes back in January, does he stay or does he go? After that speech from Thomas Frank at the end of last season, how do you dare, after he's backed you to the hills over this betting situation and saga, how can you pick up your bags and just go mid-season? You come straight back, right? You've had your time away from football. You've been training behind closed doors, whatever it may be. At least surely you're going to finish the season with Brentford and help them achieve something in the campaign, even if it's just stability again. And then go into summer when you've built up your fitness for the back end of the season, because Tony's not going to be ready to play and kick ball from the get-go. He's going to need a little bit of a gracing period, a little bit of a match sharpness, you know. And if you're going to move to a new club, you probably want to go in the best condition. You don't want to go in the condition of being away for all that time. So for me, and for the respect to Brentford, I think Tony should stay at Brentford in January, finish off the season, bang in the goals, get back into the side, get your fitness levels up. Those moves that were there in January, I think will be there in the summer. And you can assess situations a lot better for clubs and where they finished and whatnot. And pay respect to Brentford, who backed you in this time. I think that's the way I'd expect him to go about it. if he has a heart. So 12th place for Brentford, 13th for Palace. Ayew and Schlupp on the wings is not for me. It's very, very much a massive drop-off in terms of excitement from Zaha and Elise. Elise to come back from injury, Zaha gone. Lerma is a shrewd signing on a free with Decore as a base. I think that's a good way to work off. I want to see where Franca is. Franca, they signed for 20 million euros from Brazil, young 19-year-old winger. If they can get him into the Zaha position and they got Eze, Franca and Elise, and there's some sort of chemistry and excitement there, then we're here. We're back. Palace is back. But the wingers that they've been having to use right now, not for me. And obviously Henderson comes in to compete with Johnstone, and Edouard has got 3 goals so far this season. If he can keep banging them in and hit like a 12 to 15, I think let's just say 12. Let's be humble here. Good. Finally, someone Palace have that they can ask to score goals instead of, you know, Ayew, Mateta chipping in here and there, not really doing the business. 15th, I've got Bournemouth. 16th, I've got Burnley. And this is where El Sakiko, who gets sacked in the bottom kind of 4-5, because these guys are all in relegation battles. Burnley in 16th, Wolves in 17th, 18th, Everton, 19th, Sheffield United, and 20th, Luton. Burnley, if they don't show a plan B and stop trying to play their way out of danger, they may be in danger, because this is the Premier League and they don't have the quality to outplay teams as much as they may try with what Company did in the Championship. They're going to struggle if they try to bop teams off the park. Like I said, the teams above them have got some serious midfields. Paulinho in the Fulham midfield, Decore, Jeffrey Lerma. That's a good pivot partnership, you know. Even at Brentford, you know, Janssen, Norgard. If you want to bop these teams, fair play. You can try it, but I think it could be sticky icky. And then will he be sacked? And then will Sean Dyche go from Everton to Burnley and create the whole story that keeps them up and go back to your roots and whatnot? It will be interesting. That will be a storyline and a half. Wolves, they're going to have to spread the goals out between Neto, Podence and Kuna. Good luck, again, in a relegation battle. Everton have sold Iwobi to Fulham. I thought was a bright spark in Lampard's tenure in the midfield, in the central midfield. When they moved him out wide, wasn't such a fan. Danjuma and Beto will bust. If Danjuma and Beto can put together some sort of partnership to get goals, then cool. Outside of that, they've lost a lot in that team, and they really haven't invested piles because of financial issues. So again, I think Everton could be relegated. Sheffield United and Fulham, Sheffield United and Luton, it speaks for themselves. Those guys are in serious trouble. Sheffield United sold a couple of key players. Sander Berge went to Burnley. Another player went to Marseille. Luton have not been able to even put together any sort of stamp on their squad. They've just been trying to put the stadium together. They don't have the facilities. They don't have the capacities. It's a long day. Just enjoy the ride. Enjoy being here while you're here. That's my prediction. That's my table. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Give me your table. Give me your table, 20 teams. I want to see it, because this is what we're locking and loading in. This is what we are dying by, this very sword at the end of the season, and we're going to come back and revise it and say, this is what we said. Forget what I said. Remember what I say now. Whatever I said before the transfer window closed, whatever I said when there were friendlies going on, whatever I said before the season kicked off, take those little thoughts and flush them down the toilet. This is my table. This is what I want to be judged upon. And I want you to leave your tables in the comments down below, because when we do revise and go back over this at the end of the season, I'm going to screenshot the comments and see the tables you've been given, and I'm going to start exposing everybody. So I don't know if I've encouraged you, but leave your comments. I'm exposed myself too, but I have to expose everybody else. So yeah, leave your comments, smash up the likes and subscribe. I will see you guys next time. In a bit, people. Peace.